What's up, guys? Welcome to this very beginning tutorial of Ableton Live. We're going to go through the basic interface and just kind of get familiar with like checking out the way it looks and some of the functionality and the different views that we have going on in here. Before we get started, I just want to let you know Ableton is really an instrument in itself. You can play Ableton. It's like playing drums or guitar or whatever, your kazoo. It's an instrument in itself, and the more you play it, the better you're going to get. So I can't stress enough how important it is just to continue to practice and practice and practice, because the more you play with it, the more familiar you're going to get. So yeah, so we're just going to kind of jump in the very beginning of things. If you're already familiar with like the roundabouts and the view in Ableton, this will just all be review for you. But basically we've got two different kinds of views in Ableton. We've got what's called the session view right here, which I usually describe as like a creative drawing board of just jotting down ideas, so to speak. And it's also great for live performance. So live performance and just jotting down ideas and arranging and composing songs in the early stages is really great for what we're looking at right now. This is called session view. So the other view in Ableton is called arrangement view, and the way we would get to that is take our cursor to the top right corner and click on this. We've got these two little buttons here. If I click on this top one, this is showing us arrangement view. Now you'll notice that there's two MIDI tracks right here, and we've got two audio tracks right here as well. And MIDI tracks obviously are for MIDI, audio is for audio. So audio, you could drag and drop an audio sample into here and use the audio like a song out of your iTunes. You can straight up drag and drop an audio file off your desktop or anywhere on your computer and just drop it into an audio track. MIDI is a little different. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and this is where we would get like our virtual instruments or programming plugins and playing back instruments themselves. We're not going to go too deep into that. We'll explain a lot more things later on that deeper level. But let's go back to session view. So we got session and arrangement. In session view, these four tracks that we're seeing right here, the two MIDI and the two audio tracks, are the exact same tracks that we have going on in here. These are just two different ways of working. So if I go back to my session view, you can see we have these other two tracks over here, and these are a little bit different. These are what we call return tracks. Some may refer to them as like a bus, or a return track is basically where most of our effects or other devices in Ableton are going to be used in order to send our MIDI or audio tracks to those specific effects. And we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. So then we have our master channel right here. So all the audio is defaulted from Ableton from any one of these tracks. Any one of these tracks are going to go through the master. So, and based on the default. So we can change that later with routing, but just know your master is like the master of all the volume, all the audio that's spewing out of Ableton that you're hearing in your headphones or on your speakers. Over here to the left, we have what's called the browser. So if we look at the browser, we've got several categories in here. We've got sounds. This is kind of like a quick library of toys and sounds to jump in and start playing with. You can, if you want to grab a MIDI instrument or a preset in Ableton to play like a pad or a bass sound, or you've got experimental. If you click on any one of these folders, you can see it expands, and you've got more presets to play with that are similar to these sounds. So for example, if I open up mallets, then these are all mallet sounds. The next folder we have is drums. So if I open up drum hits, these are all specific individual hits. So these are all different tom sounds. And you'll notice if you click on one of these audio samples, it'll start playing if this little blue headphone jack is on. If I turn that off and I click on a sample, it's not going to actually play it back for me. So this is a good way to demo different sounds and kind of scroll through. I like to use my arrow keys on my computer, and I can just kind of scroll through and hear the different sounds that I want to use. So we're not going to go deep into the drum rack, but all these other things down here are actual drum rack presets. The drum rack is one of Ableton's most powerful devices that I use virtually in every single song, and a lot of people, once they learn how to use the drum rack, they just dive into Ableton and they're like, that's what committed me to Ableton versus Logic or Pro Tools or other popular DAWs out there. So then we've got our instruments, and the instruments folders is what we would call like our instrument devices. So basically each one of these instruments are the hosting platform to create these sounds up here in the categories. So all these sounds in this sounds folder all these sounds were created using one of these instruments, and that'll make more sense later in the course. So then next we have our audio effects. Our audio effects can be used on any track. It can be used on return tracks that we have our A and our B returns over here. We have our audio tracks, and it can be used on audio tracks, and it can be used on MIDI tracks or our master. So these are just fun toys and things that we can use to shape sounds, to add some kind of cool effect onto our projects. Then we have MIDI effects. Our MIDI effects are a little bit different. They can only be used on MIDI tracks. So these two guys, we can only use MIDI effects on our MIDI tracks. And if you have Ableton Live 9 Suite, you can create as many tracks as you possibly want. Then we go to Max for Live. Max for Live is created by a company called Cycling 74, which was purchased in 2017 by Ableton. And it's kind of its own software. You literally could create like your own Ableton with Max for Live. It's a really in-depth, well, I guess Max MSP is what you would use. But Max for Live are devices made using like an outside source for coding. It's a deeper kind of involved thing that we're not going to touch on too much right now, but just know that's there. And these are just different devices and effects you can use. If you go to your Ableton account, you should be able to download Max for Live for free if you have Ableton 9 Suite. And there's a pack called Max for Live Essentials, and it's a really, really great pack you can download, and it'll automatically install into Ableton's browser, and it gives you more audio effects and MIDI effects and instruments that we talked about a second ago. Then we've got our plugins. These are third-party plugins, so it's software not made by Ableton, but that can be used inside Ableton. So Native Instruments is a really big one, and I have a lot of different types of plugins in here. There's a lot of great plugin companies out there. We'll touch on a few of these in some of the other courses, but don't worry about that right now. Then we've got our clips, and all of these are just short little loops of different things that come with Ableton that you can choose from and play with, and you can click and drag and drop any of these onto an audio or MIDI track, which we'll do later in video. Then we got samples, and these are all like one hits, like one ride or one snare sound or one shot of something. So that's what those are. Then we've gotten our packs over here. Packs are things you can download packs off of your account in Ableton, ableton.com. We also have our core library in here with more effects and devices. If you go to your user library next, then this is where basically you would save your own samples and your own sounds that you can use later. So we can save devices that we create in Ableton, make our own custom devices and sounds that we can use later, which is really cool because as an artist and a producer, it's really awesome to be able to like create your own sounds and have something really original and unique to share. There's a lot of people out there who just download sample packs and stuff, and then they hear another song and like, oh, I actually use that sample pack. So I like to use a lot of original stuff and shape my own sounds because it just sounds more original. So, and then you got your current project folder. Anything that you're creating in your current Ableton project should be showing up in here. So yeah, that's the basic run through of the interface with Ableton. And if we want to go in and look at some other controls we have here, if we start at the top, we've got link, and link is basically what's going to link your computer with another computer. Say you and another guy wanted to DJ, or you wanted to link up to some external source and have Ableton's tempo be locked in with another computer so you guys can synchronize what you're doing with the set. That's cool. We've got our tap tempo, so we can tap and change the speed. This is what we would call our BPM right here. It's 123 right now, and our BPM just stands for beats per minute. It's also known as tempo, so how fast the timing is in Ableton. Everything in Ableton wants to sync and clock up to itself. So this is really great tool to like, I think it usually defaults at 120 when you open a new project. You can change that if you want. We've got our metronome here, so if I turn on the metronome, I can just click it and it'll see if it's yellow, it's on. We won't worry about this too much yet. But then we've got our global play, stop, and our arrangement record button, and some other functions here that we'll dive into later. Also, if we go down here, so we'll change it up a little bit. If I go down and I look, we've got mixer controls right here going on in the middle. This is where we would do our routing. Say if you wanted to record like a microphone into Ableton, you would do that through one of your audio tracks, and this is how you would route your interface into there. We're not going to worry about that right now. Monitoring, and then output, you can see that the audio is going to the master. Everything's going to the master. And you can change these views of what's going on with these controls, these mixer controls, both in session view and in arrangement view by choosing these little icons right here. So all these controls for each one of these tracks are the same. It's just two different ways of looking at them, right? So then I'll go and I can choose to close certain windows to kind of clean it up, make it easier to see things. You can see we can make our return tracks disappear if I click on the R. And same thing with the S. I can make my send knobs disappear as well. And then I also have mixer controls. So if we wanted to, we can make that disappear. We've got track delay, don't worry about that right now. And then our crossfaders for assigning the crossfader to A or B for each track. So if we look over here down the bottom left, we can see that we have our info view. And if you take your mouse and hover over anything in Ableton, this is going to give you a good brief explanation of what it is and what it's for. So continue to use that as you're working in Ableton, and it'll help you figure out your way around, and then you'll be making awesome music soon enough. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.